Hi guys, Mac here with yet another review. This time we're going to be doing a TV review, which is something I'm really excited about. Obviously I've only ever done one for the channel, which was Alien Isolation, the digital series, which, in all fairness, wasn't really a good one. Um, but yeah, so let's move on. Before I start, I just want to quickly say, if you like the video, be sure to hit like, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell to be notified, and with that, let's begin. So today I am going to be reviewing the newest Netflix series, Love, Death, and Robots. Now, I know for a while now I've been saying I'm going to do some of the Netflix shows, stuff like Carmen Sandiego, of course the Umbrella Academy, and I am going to get round to them. But this is one that I have to talk about because I've now watched this show twice, and I love it. I'm just getting that straight out of the way. I absolutely adore this show. So, brief bit of background history on this. So, with this show, it didn't originally start out as a TV show. Originally, the idea was, if anyone has seen it before, back in the 80s, there was a cult film called Heavy Metal that was produced by Ivan Reitman, the mastermind behind the Ghostbusters franchise. And essentially, what Heavy Metal was this animated movie where it was about, well, it was sort of like an anthology, a collection of short stories that were done with hand-drawn animation. They had very adult themes. They had great heavy metal music, or rock music in general. I mean, I'm sure Black Sabbath was even in the soundtrack for that. But yeah, you had great music. You had these incredibly adult animated sequences. I mean, even South Park has parodied heavy metal on a few occasions. Mainly in the cheesing episodes where the entire town gets high on cat piss, and they basically start seeing this big-breasted woman and, this fantasy world. That is literally ripped straight from heavy metal. I mean, hell, it even plays the music from heavy metal. But yeah, so after the film came out, I mean, they did do a sequel, which even I haven't seen yet. But they were trying to reboot it for a while, and the original person attached to do it was none other than David Fincher. Now, I'm a very big fan of David Fincher's work. I've followed his career pretty much since I started really getting into film. I mean, I even like some of his sort of like lesser praised works. I mean, let's just say, for instance, Alien 3. I like Alien 3. Obviously, I prefer his more his more well-known, critically acclaimed films, stuff like Seven, Fight Club. But yeah, so David Fincher was attached to direct it, and I believe, and things didn't quite pan out the way it was supposed to, and eventually, David Fincher and Tim Miller, the director of the first Deadpool movie, who is, of course, a well-known visual effects artist, or visual effects animator, they decided to work together and try and reboot heavy metal through their own sort of medium. What they chose to do was they turned it into a Netflix show, and they called it Love, Death, and Robots. Now, Love, Death, and Robots, the thing that makes it so interesting is that the entire premise of it is all in the title. The stories in it, the anthology stories, are either about love, they're about death, or they're about robots. Sometimes they mix it in, but the thing that's interesting is, even though them are the three central plots, the three central themes of this entire story, all of them, they're kind of like a nice mixture of different genres. They've got loads of different ideas in there, loads of some of them have actually got some pretty interesting things that tie them all together. But I feel the best way I can discuss Love, Death and Robots is to just sort of briefly run over the different episodes. So obviously I don't really want to talk in detail too much about the episodes because I am looking to start doing some top 10 videos, and I do want to do a top 10 episodes of this show. Primarily because each episode is kind of like its own little animated movie. Like, they don't use episode numbers, they're just animated short films. So, the first film that was in the show is called Sonys Edge. Sonys Edge, it uses... I mean, what you'll find is most of these stories do use CGI. But the thing I liked about Sonys Edge was it used like this sort of neon sort of colour palette. There was a lot of like neon styling to it. It was all CGI. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Blade Runner meets Ready Player One, which was something nice. And there's also this giant bit where they've got this kind of like this giant kaiju arena, where they've got like kaijus fighting to the death, kind of like a dogfight. And in that one sequence where they had like this massive kaiju fight, it also kind of reminded me a little bit of Pacific Rim, but the fight sequences looked like they were ripped straight out of Alita Battle Angel. And Alita Battle Angel, the action sequences in that movie were the best things about it. It was hands down the best thing about it. So to see that emulated in a Netflix show is fantastic. Each show does, at least a good majority of the shows do have a little bit of a twist. Obviously, I'm not wanting to spoil anything, so I will just pretty much say that the twist in Sonys Edge really caught me off guard, and I wasn't expecting it. Next episode I watched was called Free Robots. The idea behind this one is that humanity's basically fucked itself over. It's completely destroyed itself, and it's because of stuff like global warming and the way we've polluted the planet, and we've essentially like killed ourselves because of it. And the story is about these free robots who come to Earth to sort of do like a sightseeing tour, and they're examining all these places where humans used to inhabit. And I mean, I one bit that made me laugh in that episode in particular is there's a bit where it's got a bit where like one of the robots is kind of like hinted to be a descendant of the Xbox. And they have him sort of like say like an original Xbox, and he sort of throws it to the ground because he's like, that's not my ancestor. But I know it also has a bit involving cats, which made me laugh. I don't want to give it away because the big twist of that episode involves a cat, but it reminded me of an old advert that I think there was for, over here in the UK, it was for Cravendale Milk. And it was just brilliant. It was just nice to see it. Very funny. It did have a great cast in that one. Made me laugh. Next one was The Witness. Now, The Witness was a very interesting episode because with The Witness, the entire plot revolves around a young girl. I say a young girl. She's like sort of a young woman. A young woman is basically she's kind of getting dressed, and when she's looking out of her window, she notices a murder. Like, she basically witnesses a murder, and what happens is obviously the killer catches her as he's watching her, and the killer starts to chase her. And the entire episode is kind of about her trying to escape from this killer and trying to defend herself. The the animation in that particular episode, I really liked it because it looked very, very realistic. It looked realistic, but kind of had sort of like this interesting sort of style to it. I mean, at times it kind of reminded me a little bit of if anybody's seen the artwork on the most recent album by the band Gorillaz, it's called Humans, I believe. It kind of reminded me a bit of the artwork on that entire like album. I mean, hell, I even think the main like protagonist of that story in particular, the girl, I believe that I honestly think she looks a bit similar to Noodle from that album art. But yeah, The Witness was a really good one. Really surprised me. The twist in that one was really good. What you'll probably hear me saying a lot during this is the twist was really good. But yeah, in fact, I'm probably not even gonna do a fucking top 10 for this because I like them all, and it's really hard for me to narrow it down. So I'll just kind of like maybe go into a little bit more detail. Suits is the next one. I really liked Suits. The thing that was so interesting about Suits was, in terms of the animation style, it used a very similar animation style to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And as you'll know if you've checked out my review for it, by the way, that is also up. Just gonna plug that in there. You'll know that I absolutely adored the animation in Into the Spider-Verse. Basic story of Suits is, it's about a farmer colony who basically they own these giant mechs, sort of similar to like a Titanfall situation, and they have this sort of gate protecting them from like this evil alien creature. The entire plot basically revolves around creatures get in, so these farmers have to jump into their mechs. And the thing that's so interesting is, obviously, like I said, it uses sort of Spider-Man style of animation, but the creature design in it looks very similar to Starship Troopers, if anybody's seen Starship Troopers. And just the idea of these sort of Titanfall mechs kind of like struggling to fend off against like the bugs from Starship Troopers. It's fun. It's fantastic. It's very, very well animated. Some of the dialogue is great in it as well. I mean, it's got everything you want from a story. Really, it's got humor. It's got love. It's got loss. Very heavy action. It's also got some decent creature design. It's just overall a great episode. Next one, I probably would say is one of my favourite ones. It's called Sucker of Souls. Now, the reason I like Sucker of Souls is it's just so simplistic, but it's great. The idea is an archaeologist, he hires a mercenary team to protect him while he goes in search of an ancient treasure. When they uncover this tomb, basically they unleash Dracula. And Dracula's designed like this big, hulking monster, where he gets even bigger the more he feasts on blood. And for some reason, he's also afraid of cats. I don't really know how else to explain it. But basically, they kind of like have to survive. The thing with this particular episode is, I like the fact it's sort of, the animation style is very, it's obviously a cartoon, but it's very similar to sort of like a Flash cartoon in a way. It kind of uses sort of like what the kind of artwork you'd expect to see on, say, like a storyboard. But I mean, it was just, it was so funny. Like, it was really, really good. It's got Fred Tatasciore in this one. He plays like the lead mercenary. And he delivers probably one of the best fucking lines I've ever experienced in probably many years of watching television. So, brief spoiler alert. 1, 2, 3. So yeah, there's this kind of bit where they're all like trapped inside this room, and Dracula's trying to get through the room. And he turns around to the archaeologist and he says, like, "Can you find us a way out of here, Doc?" And the archaeologist, like, cowering under a table. And he's sort of like, "I'm an archaeologist, not an escape artist." And Fred Tatasciore, he delivers this fucking line so perfectly. He turns around and he goes, "Yeah, well, I'm an ex-soldier, not Buffy the fucking Vampire Slayer, but you don't see me crying in a corner." And it is fucking so good. It is so fucking funny. I fucking loved that episode. It was so funny. Next episode was called When the Yogurt Took Over. Yeah, it's exactly what the title says. It's got this interesting little animation style, which I kind of liked. I mean, I'd probably say it's one of the weaker ones, in all fairness, of the entire series. But it was, to be honest, it's worth a watch purely alone for Maurice LaMarche. Now, Maurice LaMarche, if you don't know him, is the voice of the Brain from Pinky and the Brain. And it's just, he delivers this narration that is so great, and it ties in really well with the entire story. Basically, the idea of the plot for this one is humanity and these sort of like very smart scientists. I'm lost for words at this point. They combine like DNA or intelligence with a yogurt, and the yogurt gains sentience and kind of like gains all the answers in the universe, and it essentially takes over the world. I don't really know how else to explain it. It's just the entire plot of that combined with Maurice LaMarche's like narration just tops it for me. Now to the next episode, and this is the one that really made me want to do this review. So, the next episode I want to talk about is called Beyond the Aquila Rift. Now, I'm going to get this straight out here. Beyond the Aquila Rift is hands down the best episode of the entire season. It might just be one of my favourite episodes of television that I've ever seen. And the entire concept of it is just fucking horrifying. It's amazing. I mean, hell, it's even made me want to go and read the short story that it's based off. So, in Beyond the Aquila Rift, this starship crew, they go through a portal on their way back to Earth after doing what they think is another successful mission. After they go through this portal, they basically the crew start to wake up and they realise that something's went wrong. They're greeted by a friendly face who they haven't seen in years, and she basically tells them that their ship, even though they've only been sort of in stasis and asleep for a few months, they are now in, they're in this sector called the Sadaka Sector. I believe it's called the Sadaka Sector. But that's like a light million years away from Earth. Or at least a light 1,000 years away from Earth. And so they kind of don't really know what to do. And they're trapped on this station. But the more things go on, they start to see some of the crew start to see things that they don't want to see. And, you know, there's kind of like this sort of fear, like there's this feeling about it of uneasiness, and you feel like there's always something wrong, and there's, I think the best way I can sum it up is like you always have this feeling that there's something sinister, but you don't really know what to believe anymore. It makes you question your existence, question your reality, and the real reality in it, which is in the twist, is probably one of the scariest fucking things I've seen. And in all honesty as well, It does. I will quickly mention this now. This episode does feature a creature, like sort of like an alien creature, which you'd expect from a space sort of episode. Um, and the creature design on it is probably some of the best creature design I have seen in a long time. And it, I'm not even joking. It genuinely shit me up. I squealed when I saw it, and I actually like turned away. This was the first time I watched it. Obviously, I've seen it a few more times now, and I really do appreciate it. But the thing that makes this so good is it has this song in it called "Living in the Shadows" by I forgot his name. I literally just I'll quickly get the name up. 2 seconds. Matthew Perryman Jones. Yeah, Living in the Shadows by Matthew Perryman Jones. That song plays, and I shit you not, it is so fitting for the episode. But the thing that really impressed me with Beyond the Aquila Rift is there's a sex scene in it. And I know what you're thinking. What's so impressive about a sex scene? Well, this is the thing. I believe I read this somewhere online. Beyond the Aquila Rift was done by a team who have worked on many video games, including Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, the recent God of War reboot from last year, and the upcoming Beyond Good and Evil 2. And these are people who have animated and worked on video games. And anyone who's played a video game knows that sex scenes are usually some of the most awkward fucking sequences in a video game. And this sex scene, I swear to God, it looked real. It looks incredible, like the way it's done. And I mean, the fact that this is animation, the visuals in that episode looked exactly how I picture a PS5 game looking. In fact, it kind of made me think this is how I'd imagine a PS5 Mass Effect game looking. And yeah. It was spectacular. If you don't listen to me, and obviously you don't go out and watch, this show, because I am gonna like give it like a really good score for this. I will at least say, please, at the very least, watch Beyond the Aquila Rift, please. And we better move on because we're already at 22 minutes, and I've got loads more things to review. I've got a lot more stories to talk about. Next episode is called Good Hunting. This was another one of my favourite episodes. Probably one of my top 3 or top 5. The thing that was so interesting about this is it kind of had sort of like this anime sort of vibe to it, but at the same time it also kind of has the vibe of a Disney cartoon, but it is very ultra violent. It's there's a bit in it where there's kind of like a standoff, which looks a little bit similar to something from Kill Bill, which I really liked. The basic story of Good Hunting is there's a young man who's been taught to hunt, and he's been taught to hunt these magical, mythical creatures. And he kind of forms a friendship with one. But obviously, as the world gets more technically advanced and, pollutes the earth, as I've already said, this is kind of like a running theme through the entire thing. The more it all happens, the more humanity advances. Basically, the weaker his friend, who's like this mythical sort of fox woman, she gets weaker and weaker. And just this story of how they've sort of like looked out for each other over the years, like it's very fitting, and it's something you can kind of relate to and something you can really appreciate. It even ties in with the whole British, like the British ruling over it even has this thing with the British ruling over China, which I found really interesting. Like, I don't really want to take too much time talking. I think I spent too much time talking on Beyond the Aquila Rift. But I just want to get through these now. Because we're at 25 minutes, I don't want this video going on for an hour. Next episode was The Dump. Basically, it's about an old man voiced by Nolan North, who, by the way, is brilliant in this episode. I mean, I fucking love Nolan North in general, but he actually... I don't know, he makes you believe he's an old man, and I've never had Nolan North make me believe he's an old man. So that was very fun. Basically, he's this old man living in a dump, and he starts telling this story about a giant, like, monster made from pollution. It's funny. I just kind of want to go through the other episodes, just say things I liked. Shapeshifters, another one of the episodes where it looked like a PS5 game. It's about two dog soldiers in Afghanistan who basically they're werewolves. It's got this whole werewolf fight sequence, and the gore in that is amazing. There's bits where like people are getting their muscles ripped out and stuff. But it also has sort of like an underlying message that we kind of abandon and take for granted our soldiers. And I don't know, it's one of those episodes that really does make you think. Shapeshifters is another one I definitely would recommend you watch. Helping Hand is a very interesting one. It's very much... It's kind of like 127 hours, but in space. That's the best way I can sum this up. Once again, visuals amazing. Fish Night. Now, Fish Night is a very interesting one as well, with an interesting sort of theme behind it. Once again, pollution plays a very big part in it. But it's kind of got these sort of underlying themes in it in terms of the twists and stuff like that. But the thing that really interested me about Fish Night is it looks like Netflix have been using the Telltale engine. Because this episode, I swear to God, looks like an episode of The Wolf Among Us. The actors in this one are Kirk Thornton, who plays an older salesman, and Yuri Lowenthal, who plays a younger salesman. But the colours in this, the way the animation is done, just the animation alone makes it very pretty and worth a watch. Then you have Lucky 13. So Lucky 13 kind of reminded me a bit of Halo. The idea is there's this ship called Lucky 13 where, I think they call it Rusty Old 13 at the beginning. Because every time when it went out for a mission, it would come back with no crew, pretty much. Like, all the crew would die on it. And then there's a pilot who makes it work, and basically it always keeps her alive and keeps her crew alive. And so she starts calling it Lucky 13, and she pilots it into, like, these war zones and stuff like that. That's another good episode. I mean, what you'll find is all these are good episodes, but there's different things that make them interesting. Next one is Zima Blue. This one's based on a story from the same author as Beyond the Aquila Rift. Zima Blue is about an artist who has this distinctive art style. It's like kind of like a specific shade of blue. And after 100 years, he basically decides to do an interview with a reporter to talk about his work, to tell his story, and to prepare for the world for his final piece of artwork. This one had a very interesting story to it, and I think the way it was done was kind of heartwarming in a way. And it was one of those things where it showed that despite, I mean, obviously everyone wants to achieve fame, or everyone wants to achieve greatness, but it shows that side where it's like, even if you were to achieve greatness, you were to be rich, you have everything you possibly ever wanted, would you really be as happy as you were in the days where you were trying to make your way in the world, trying to find what made you special? And Kevin Michael Richardson plays Zima so perfectly. He has this very sort of subtle, sort of calm voice to him where you can believe everything he says. We're coming up towards the end now. Next episode was Blind Spot, which took on the form of it's sort of like a Saturday morning action cartoon. It's basically about these robot bandits who are trying to rob this memory chip, like this data chip, from a fucking from this heavily armored convoy. And some of the stuff in that was great as well. Like, it kind of reminded me a little bit of like the heist sequence in Solo, a Star Wars story. But the animation was superb in that. I mean, it was funny. It was just a thrill ride from start to finish. And even though it was only short, it did feel like it was the right sort of time for it. Like, it felt like it was about the right, length. Next episode is Ice Age. This is the only one in the entire episode, in the entire season, to feature live action actors. Basically, Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Topher Grace, they play a young couple who they move into their apartment and they open an antique freezer which is in their apartment. And basically, when they open it up, they discover that they've got an entire civilization growing inside their freezer. While it is one of the weaker episodes, and I definitely think that they asked Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Topher Grace to sort of downplay their acting a little bit, because they didn't seem very interested, to be fair. They kind of felt like, okay, it's an easy paycheck. I'll look into this square for a few minutes. And I think other than that, though, the idea that you see all these civilizations growing and you just see the fun of it, it looked great. It did look great visually, but I mean, I feel it was one of the weaker episodes, especially when you had someone like Mary Elizabeth Winstead in it. And okay, so moving on, the penultimate episode was called Alternate Histories. This is definitely one of the more funnier episodes of the entire show. The basic premise of this one is there's an app what allows you to sort of rewrite history and see what would have happened in history should certain events happen. So in particular, it uses the death of Adolf Hitler. And yes, that's right, I said Adolf Hitler. But there's a bit where it goes back to when Hitler's a kid, and it shows them trying to kill a young It shows them trying to kill a younger Hitler, and it's got these six scenarios on what could happen should Hitler have died in a certain way. So they've got bits where he's getting sucked off by sirens, or he's getting encased in jelly, and it's just so fucking stupid, but it's great. I found myself laughing a lot at it. And finally, the final episode was called The Secret War. Now, The Secret War is one very much like Beyond the Aquila Rift, where it has a very realistic sort of visual style. I mean, at times it also kind of looked a little bit like Red Dead Redemption 2. But the interesting thing is they have this thing where it also kind of reminded me a little bit of Metro. And, the idea is you've got these Russian soldiers who are hunting a supernatural evil in the forests of Siberia. It's got everything that you could possibly want from that type of story. It's got horror, it's got action, it's got camaraderie, it's got a father and son relationship in it, which was interesting. Like I said, it's got a lot of gore. It's got a ton of gore. I mean, there's bits where people's getting their arms ripped off and stuff like that, and I'm sure there's a bit with an eyeball coming out. Or it might be on one of the other episodes. But this is one that had Stefan Kapicic, who of course voices and plays Colossus in the Deadpool movies. But yeah, Secret War is definitely one that I'd recommend for anyone who's sort of a fan of kind of. I'd probably say for fans of Metro, to be fair. But yeah, so that's kind of a brief overview of all the episodes. Like I said, there's 18 episodes, so that's probably why it's taken as long as it has. I mean, we're up to 34 minutes now. Jesus Christ. Probably going to be one of my longest videos, to be fair. But The music is great in it. The music, all the composed music. The stories are fantastic. The acting is superb. Well, apart from the brief bit of live action acting from, obviously, like I said, Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Topher Grace. And in all honesty, it's showing why more and more I love animation more than live action. It's got a lot of creativity to it. The fact that this is a heavy metal reboot that takes out the heavy metal and instead replaces it with more storytelling and, like, kind of like actual messages and I'd say sort of subliminal messaging. I don't know, I liked it. I really did like it a lot. Obviously David Fincher touched this, so it's golden anyway. So, yeah, overall, I'd probably say that Love, Death and Robots, I'd give it a 5 out of 5. Main reason is I feel that, I mean, to be honest, it already got up to a 4 for Beyond the Aquila Rift alone. But the fact that you have so many other good episodes like Sonys Edge, Shapeshifters, Good Hunting, Zima Blue, Alternate Histories, the fact you've got all these Blind Spot, you've got all these great episodes, they all just, they make it worth that 5 out of 5. If you watch anything on Netflix, Death and Robots, and I cannot urge this enough, please. Especially Beyond the Aquila Rift, once again, and I know you guys are probably getting sick of me talking about it, but I seriously, I can't recommend an episode of television more than that. It is perfect. It is perfection. But yeah, so overall, I'm giving this a 5 out of 5. It's definitely one that you need to check out. It is superb from start to finish. And if you watch it all in a binge like I did, it'll probably come in around like 3 hours. Normally, I think it came in about 3 hours for me, or just under 3 hours. But yeah, so that's my thoughts. If you like this video, be sure to hit like, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell to be notified, and if you've seen Love, Death and Robots, be sure to let me know in the comment section below what you thought of it. I mean, what was your favourite episode? Did you think differently to my opinions? But yeah, until next time, guys.